An elite soldier, Jake, fights against terrorists to stop a bombing plan that could potentially kill millions of people. But will he be able to save the lives of Amine's wife and unborn child before it's too late? Lieutenant Jake Harris, who was on his way to carry out a secret mission with his team, and also a woman named Zoe Anderson, who is a CIA analyst, are on their way to pick up a prisoner convicted of terrorism named Amin Mansour, who is being held at the CIA Black Site Island prison. Upon arrival, Jake and his team are greeted by a man named Tom Shields, who is the deputy warden of the prison. While walking to the warden's office, they saw several prisoners locked up in open cells. Tom then takes Zoe and Jake to see Jack York, the warden in charge of the place. Tom warns Zoe and Jake that York is not an easy person to talk to because he is very temperamental. He is also not friendly to them because he has not received any official notification of their arrival. York seemed curious as to why the CIA was suddenly interested in Amin Mansour and wanted to transfer him to a prison in the United States. Zoe did not explain the reason for the transfer in detail to York because it was confidential. However, Zoe was able to confirm that the pickup and transfer of Amin Mansour had been approved by the Minister of Defense. While submitting the official documents signed by the minister to York, York still insisted that he could not just let a convicted terrorist prisoner be transferred to another prison because it was too dangerous. York intended to call the minister to confirm the transfer and ask Tom to take Jake and Zoe to meet Amin Mansour, who had been detained for months and subjected to various tortures, but the man still remained silent. Zoe then requests that Amin's chains be released and interrogates him. Amin emphasized that he was a businessman, not a terrorist as he had been accused of. Zoe then told Amin that he would soon be transferred to the United States. Hearing this, Amin demanded his right as a British citizen to be accompanied by a lawyer, but Zoe said that the foreign minister had revoked his citizenship, so Amin had no right to demand anything outside. Jake warned Zoe that her approach to the prisoner is very dangerous, both physically and mentally, but Zoe doesn't seem to pay much attention to Jake's warning and wants to move Amin Mansour immediately, just like York. Jake also conveys his suspicions to Zoe and the CIA regarding the sudden pickup and transfer of Amin Mansour, but Zoe just said that the CIA did not want the events of September 11th to happen again. Some of Jake's men also thought that Zoe must be hiding something. However, Jack said that their mission this time was only to escort Zoe and the prisoners being taken, nothing more. Not long after, the prisoner's truck arrived, but there was a bit of chaos when someone who got off the truck shot a guard. The truck then entered by hitting the gate, and a group of gunmen hiding in the truck opened fire on the guard shockingly and indiscriminately. Gunfights are inevitable. Jake and his team have no choice but to get involved in helping the guards. Zoe then took Amin out of his holding cell and was about to head to the helicopter accompanied by Jake and several members of his team. However, before they got there, a group of armed men blew up the helicopter. The terrorists managed to knock out the guards and take control of the place, urging Jake and the others to find a safe enough hiding place. Available at York's office through CCTV cameras, York also seemed to have difficulty holding back the attacks of the armed men alone. Zoe, observing the group of people who attacked York, recognized one of them, a man named Hakim CRF, a former mercenary who became the top leader of a radical group in Syria. Jake then asked Zoe to tell the truth about the attack by Hakim and his gang aimed at killing Amin. Zoe finally revealed that Amin was a sympathizer and financier for ISIS. This was proven when the CIA found evidence of money laundering carried out by Amin through his company, where the money was used to finance ISIS to carry out terrorist attacks in various countries. Zoe tries to convince Jake that Amin is involved in a plan to carry out a massive bombing by ISIS in Washington, D.C. Therefore, Zoe was determined to immediately take Amin away to the United States to thwart the bombing plan because based on her analysis, Amin knew the location of the bomb. However, Amin denied all of Zoe's words and insisted that he did not know Hakim CRF and his gang. In the end, Jake still believes in Zoe and plans to get Zoe and Amin out of there, but Tom didn't seem to agree with Jake because he didn't believe Zoe's words, which he thought were too suspicious. Jake then puts a bulletproof vest on Amin, where Amin then tells Jake that he will regret everything for believing Zoe's words more than him. Meanwhile, in the corridor, two members of Jake's team are holding back attacks from terrorists who are trying to break in. They had been hit by fire several times but managed to withstand enemy attacks for a while. Tom intends to hand over Amin to Hakim CRF and his gang so that they stop the attacks because Tom doesn't want his men to become victims just because they continue to protect a convicted terrorist prisoner like Amin. But Zoe got in the way and tried to protect him and annoyed Tom. Then, Tom asks Jake to kill Amin because Jake refuses to kill him. Tom grabs a gun and intends to kill him with his own hands, feeling his life was threatened at gunpoint. Amin finally revealed that his 5-year-old son was killed by a U.S. military missile attack while they were attending a wedding ceremony. A week after the incident, Amin was approached by a leader of a radical group and his gang who wanted to use Amin's company to carry out money laundering practices. Amin said that he was very sorry for helping them because at that time, he was mourning the death of his son, and his heart was filled with revenge and anger because of the loss of his only child. However, Amin insisted that he had absolutely no idea about the bombing plan Zoe was referring to. Shortly after, they received a video call from York informing him that the emergency phone at his office was not working, and that one of them had to leave. Not long after, suddenly the call was cut off because York had to face an attack from the terrorists. Tom then tells Jake about the location of where Jake intends to go there himself to recalibrate the signal frequency so they can ask the military for help. Before leaving, Zoe told Jake that it was likely that Amin had lied, and Zoe was very sure that the man must have known about the bombing plan and the location of the bomb. Jake then slipped out through a small window that Hakim then asked the woman where Amin Mansur was, and she revealed that the CIN Navy SEALs would take Amin Mansur to Washington, D.C. Hakim, who seemed annoyed, then killed the woman and ordered his henchmen to look for Amin's whereabouts everywhere. Jake then rushes to kills several terrorists and makes it there. However, Jake doesn't understand how some of the equipment in the room works, so he catches off guard and doesn't realize a terrorist has entered there and is about to attack him. Luckily, York arrived on time and managed to kill the terrorist. York finally tried to call for help while Jake ran outside luring the terrorists away. Meanwhile, Hakim and his henchmen continued to search for Amin Mansur's whereabouts in various places but had yet to find him. Hakim believed that Amin was most likely still in the control room, so Hakim then summoned one of his subordinates who was still quite young and reassured the young man with words of encouragement and praise after Hakim brought up the oath that the young man had sworn, which stated that he dared Todi to fulfill a noble task and get our reward. Hakim then put a bomb vest on the young man and asked him to carry out a suicide bombing. The young man looked shocked and frightened by the suicide mission that Hakim gave him, but his colleagues cheered for him and assured him that it was a noble task and would be rewarded. Hakim and his henchmen then took the young man to the control room where they believed Amin was hiding there. They then threw smoke bombs to obscure the view and distract members of the Navy SEAL team. At the same time, Jake and York managed to return to the control room through a secret passage where York then intended to kill Amin because Amin was the cause of all his men dying in vain, but Zoe and Jake tried to stop him. Another shootout took place and was very fierce, killing all members of the Navy SEAL team. Jake and York realized this and rushed to help, but it was too late when the young man who was about to carry out a suicide bombing came forward and blew himself up right in front of the control room entrance. Due to the explosion, Jake and York managed to survive, so was Amin, but Zoe and Tom were injured so badly they couldn't get up. Jake told Amin to stay where he was, but he didn't heed Jake's orders and quickly ran away from there. Jake then checked the condition of Zoe, who was lying weak and helpless, where she then told Jake that Amin's wife was pregnant. A dying Zoe then asks Jake to take Amin to Washington, D.C. to save his wife and his unborn child. After saying that Zoe finally breathed her last, Jake then hides when he realizes that Hakim and his gang entered the room to check things out. Hakim looked very angry when found out that Amin had managed to escape. In fact, the purpose of sacrificing the young man was to eliminate Amin so that he would not reveal information about the massive bombing they were about to carry out. Tom, who was apparently still alive, then told Hakim that Amin had leaked everything Tom was killed by Hakim. After that, Hakim then ordered his henchmen to return to hunting for Amin, but not long after, Hakim received information that the United States military would send air support to the location to deal with their attack and bring Amin Mansur to Washington, D.C. One of his henchmen suggested that they postpone the search for Amin Mansur and hurry away from there. However, Hakim stubbornly said they would not leave before killing Amin Mansur. Hakim and his gang did not realize that Amin was hiding among the piles of corpses of the prisoners. After that, Amin rushed to change his clothes and disguised himself as one of Hakim's men. However, his disguise was soon discovered and Amin was one of his henchmen suggested that they postpone the search for Amin Mansur and hurry away from there. However, Hakim stubbornly said they would not leave before killing Amin Mansur. Hakim and his gang did not realize that Amin was hiding among the piles of corpses of the prisoners. After that, Amin rushed to change his clothes and disguised himself as one of Hakim's men. However, his disguise was soon discovered, and Amin was immediately thrown into a detention cell. Jake was apparently not far away when Hakim's gang arrested Amin. Jake then attacks Hakim's henchman guarding Amine's cell and manages to free him. Jake takes Amin out and tries to deal with the terrorist attacks, although now he has to fight alone because all his team members have died. However, Amine instead ran away and left Jake. Even so, Jake did not flinch and bravely took down the terrorists one by one. Meanwhile, Hakim and some of his men finally managed to find Amine and shoot him. When Hakim was about to execute Amine, Jake then appeared and attacked him. Jake manages to overthrow Hakim's henchman and go head-to-head with Hakim. When Jake and Hakim were fighting, Amine, who managed to survive because he was wearing a bulletproof vest, then ran away from there. Jake finally manages to kill Hakim and goes after Amine. Jake manages to corner Amine and tries to prevent him from committing suicide. Jake told Amine that his wife was pregnant and that she was most likely at the site of the bombing. So Jake tried to convince Amine to stop committing suicide and go with him to Washington, D.C. Not long after, York, who managed to survive, suddenly appeared and threatened to kill Amine. But Jake soon caught up with him and in the end, managed to bring the man down and convince York not to kill Amine. After successfully convincing York, Jake now returns to Amine and tries to convince him to work together to thwart the bombing plan to save the lives of Amine's wife and his unborn child, as well as millions of people. Amine finally gave in and agreed to be taken to Washington, D.C. to reveal the bomb's location. Just as U.S. Air Force helicopters arrived there, the film ends by showing York sitting pensively, watching Jake and Amine leave the island.